Okay. Here we go again. Like we're up and running. Bit of a juggling act. Sitting down today. No standing. Okay. So, yesterday. Oh, yes, I remember this. So, today I start with learning about permissions and why they don't function. Or rather, debugging them, I suppose. Good morning, Rambling Geek. Or just good afternoon. How you doing? Okay. Nice. Nice. I've got I've got Thursday and Friday off work, so I'm going to hopefully get a lot of stuff done in those days. Unfortunately, some of that's going to have to be getting the house ready for Christmas, but some coding as well. So, okay. So yesterday after stream, I added in some validators for the post, right? Because I was starting to talk about it yesterday, and I kind of went on to do it. And basically, there's I've got some validation layers in. I've got some validators at the handler level, but also here at the API level, things need to be validated, right? So that can be validated, right? On the input, right? There's a name, there's an email, there's a password, and the password matches, right? So putting that validation in there makes sense. If I put that validation deeper into the handler, then the handler becomes responsible for password confirmation, which seems like an API layer concern. So I added the validation in there, which I don't disagree with, right? There's still extra validation that can go into the actual handler, and that would allow for anyone who invokes it to it would be validated. But in this instance, this is an API entry point. It's fine. So then I wanted to test that I was allowed to add the user. So I wanted to put an authorization on there. I wanted to make sure I can use a policy, and that policy is can create users. I don't need can delete users yet. And I kind of created an extension method just to kind of describe that policy. So what I think he meant to be able to do is say, "Oh, these are the claims that this token should have," and in the case of the permissions, good morning, Gamal. How are you? In the case of the permissions, create users, right? So that should exist. All fine. That should work. So let's see if I'm still getting that problem, right? So this is the work items project. So what I'm getting is 401, right? Or I was yesterday. Watch this work now after it's slept, right? And actually, I need to stop that because my token will have expired. So I need to start the entire stack. I need to create a terminal project or something that I can authenticate and get the token without actually starting up the app stack. That would be a more efficient way of doing it. Because now I have to start this, then I F12 on this, so then I can pull that over. I need to, right? I can F12 that, then I can log in, get the token, copy the value. That's my value, right? Oh, Did that just decode it? Or did I just have that? Okay. I was like, really? No. So I'm getting 401 unauthorized. So I've got to kind of learn why. So in the work items project, no, tenant management project, right? Sorry, not work items. So I started the wrong one anyway. So it's good that I stopped again. I do see that the authorization is failing, right? But I can't quite tell why. So I do know that Teams permissions is working. So nothing to do with auth. Then I add auth 0, I add authorization, and I create these policies, right? And then on the endpoints, I have authorized tenant user tenant administrator. Then I add health checks. Health checks are, this is part of the distributed service stuff. So when I actually build this out this system, I'm going to use Kubernetes, and this is all part of that process where it's just health checks for the service management. Right now I'm using console, but I might actually switch it over to using Kubernetes system stuff. Add calls, that's fine. Use authorization. See, this isn't even using authentication. Right. There is an order there, by the way, that needs to be specified. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe there is a specific order those two have to go in, and they will not work with it. So let's give that a try. Somehow, even though the viewers in my YouTube stream, I mean, I really appreciate the consistency with which you're joining now. I'm really happy that it's actually giving you access to the streams. But I'm getting more followers on YouTube. I'm now up to 103 subs on YouTube, but people aren't coming in the stream very frequently. So I wonder if the watching after the stream is actually of more interest on YouTube. So just giving that a try. I'm hoping that it'll error and tell me that it's the wrong order. Oh, there we go. That was it. So use authentication, use authorization is the order. So nothing pointed me to that, right? There was no error saying, hey, your configuration is invalid that I could see, right? And I'm not gonna spend a great deal of time now looking for it. Now I know what was there, but that ordering changed how it validated that token. Good morning, Dota. Hope you're well. So use authentication, use authorization. I knew there was a necessary order, and they were both in there, so I thought that maybe it was correct. But yeah, use authentication, use authorization. I suppose that makes sense because I add authentication, then I add authorization, right? Well, it's not. So watch. So if I run this project right this second, right, I will get, when it starts up, a validation error, which is correct, right? Because I'm passing in invalid passwords, right? If I stop that and I switch these, now there might have been a message somewhere in the startup, right? But it's not invalid. It just doesn't apply the right things at the right time. So because there's no guarantee you need both, so they can't validate for both, right? So now if I do that, I'll get 401, right? Authentication is needed, right? So as far as I was concerned, my authorization's there. If I go to the program, okay, I've created a wrapper around it just to tidy it up so I can keep using it in the other applications, but can create users policies there, right? I've added that policy, can create users. You have to be a tenant, you have to have the tenant claim, and you have to have create users in your permissions, right? But if I look at tenant management here, user profiles available, now listening, application started, hosting environment development, content routes, request starting, authorization failed. Authentication scheme, bearer was challenged, right? Nothing in there saying, hey, you've got an invalid startup, by the way. So it's just one of those rules you need to learn as you're doing this stuff. And I knew it, which is why I all of a sudden thought, oh, I'll check what if there's a difference there, right? So I've obviously heard and seen that before. But there's nothing, if you were to come across this, there's nothing saying that's the problem, right? Nothing's indicating that's it. So there you go. Use authentication, use authorization. We run it now. I'll make the mistake again. When I make another API, I'll make the mistake again, without a doubt. So there we go. Now we have validation. So, stop all. Good. I know it might seem silly, but that was something that obviously I needed to overcome. I didn't want to just remove authorization because that's a necessary piece. And I want to keep trying to backfill. I don't want to move too far past without kind of reviewing these rules and these permissions, etc. Otherwise, they become, oh, well, it kind of works, so I won't worry about it. And the more application I develop without worrying about it, the more likely I am to forget that piece. Even though I think I created a specific action to verify. Doing personal finance house math looks like I've been buying later than I realized. Okay. The numbers just don't work for you right now. So let's. I don't want the free trial. I'm angry at JetBrains over that one. Like, I don't mind if you put my subscription cost up a little bit, but don't ask me for $100 to add your AI when GitHub Copilot works now, because they've finally got the chat working for GitHub Copilot as well. Yeah, yeah. The more you can downpay, the better mortgage terms they'll give you. I mean, you might find a lender that'll give you a decent rate, but 20% down. Yeah, we when we bought the house, that's one of the things I based our decision on how much we are going to take a mortgage out for was the PMI, because I did not want PMI attaching because it's just too much, and it's why we haven't refinanced the house to fix some of the problems we have with the house. We're just going to wait until my daughter goes to college, because if we refinance now, the house, because of the things that need fixing, the house isn't worth anywhere near what it was, and yeah, it won't. Mortgage insurance, private mortgage insurance. That's what PMI is. Yeah. So yeah, it's yeah. So if I was to refinance the house and remortgage it to try and get a slightly lower rate, the insurance would attach, and then I'd be paying more on a month, even though my rate was lower. Neither am I right now because I need AC. So yeah, you don't want to. You want to make sure. If I can give anybody advice on buying a house, especially in the US or I would assume Canada's similar, is if a house inspection is required and someone recommends a house inspector, pay the extra money and get a plumber, an electrician, uh, to review it with the home inspector. That they're being paid to be motivated by honesty, because the home inspector missed 2 gas leaks, and a roof that was on the verge of collapse after walking on said roof. So, and you have no recourse, so always get a second opinion on that stuff. That was the state examiner, that home inspector. That was the person that other examiners were measured against. So, yes. If you don't, yeah. There's no excuse for the fact that there was 2 gas leaks. They were actively leaking gas into the house, and an event that wasn't certified for gas. It was certified for electric, dry air, or mist on the report. So at least next time I buy a house, I will have independent electrician and plumber review it with them at the same time. Yeah. Eh. Right. You rent. Buying a house is difficult. I don't think I would have afforded it 15 years ago if I hadn't been married and had some breaks. He married into a house. Yep. That makes it certainly easier, right? Okay. So I'm going to trust, right? Because I've got unit tests around registered tenant user. We did the refactoring yesterday. And I know that registered tenant user will fire the event and the event will be subscribed. I'm going to trust that when I hit save on this, right, with the valid password, that a user is going to appear in Auth0 without any extra effort, right? So who bets against that? My login session is no longer valid. Did you hear about Canon TDD on Kent Bett's blog? Ain't no one doing Canon I don't know who he's kidding. No? I've kind of... In the last couple of years, I've moved very much away from paying attention to what okay. I'm trying to figure out how to word what I'm about to say. Yeah, I stream, right? And I know that several of you are regulars here, and you know, my opinions are one from my experience, and they are from my past, and kind of the combination of my learnings, and I'm sharing them with you. But if nothing else, I'm also promoting that pragmatism and that reality of don't just do what other people tell you to do. Go out and write software that you are comfortable working in, right? If I say nothing else, is work with software you trust over everything else, right? Because I spent a good portion of my earlier career trying to follow people like Kent Beck, like Robert Martin, like Udi Dehaan, you know, all these people that become experts, right? They've become experts because they've got experience, right? That experience doesn't transfer necessarily just because they say something, right? So if we keep trying to follow what they expect of us and diverting ourselves onto following someone else's expectation of what software should be, you know, then we end up recreating what they are. We don't think for ourselves too often. So I kind of like tidy first Substack. Is that the one? Okay, it's that one. So yeah, Kent Beck, Canon TDD. There you go. I don't have access to the other monitors, so I can't just click the link. Test-driven development is a programming workflow. A programmer needs to change the behavior of a system. TDD is intended to help the programmer create a new state of system. Which I suppose this comes in useful for stuff you've been talking about recently, right? Test list, write a test, make it pass, optionally refactor. Actually, Rambling Geek, if you're paying attention, this is probably something that it would be worth you reading as you are early in this journey. People are lousy computers. What follows looks like a computer program. It's not. Watching hands full lol. Yeah, Rambling Geek's got a day off work, so Rambling Geek's managed to join us today. Yeah, I'll go back over. I'll go over that afterwards. I'm not gonna divert right a second, but yeah, I'll leave that up. But yeah, my point there was, people love writing these things, and they are helpful. I'm not debating that people like Kent Begg and Robert Martin have had a massive influence on how software is written for the positive. But I kind of have taken those lessons that I've learned early on and kind of decided I'm not just going to listen to how everything is. I'm going to look at the code that people write and decide whether I like it or I dislike it. And why do I dislike it? Maybe I don't like their formatting. Maybe I don't like the way they structure the code. Maybe I don't understand how they structure the code, and it's easier for me not to try and spend the time getting into how they write code and more worrying about how I write code. Because I think if this something you said last week, Delta, it was kind of like you did better when you looked at the code with your debate than you did when you were just arguing face to face, right? I made a list of XP books and ordered them by how I'd read them. Yeah, I think my problem is I'm too hands on. I don't like I can read a lot, but if I don't do something or see it applied, it's just words. It needs to be applied. And what I've found is the more if you try and read how to do TDD, if you try and read how to do domain driven design, right, which I've tried for years to effectively achieve, right? It's not it doesn't just you don't just apply what you've read and say, oh, there you go, there's an example. What you'll do is you'll get that wrong, right? Then you'll get it wrong again. Then you'll get it wrong again, right? You keep getting it wrong until it feels right. And when it feels right, it might not be right by someone else's standards, but it kind of works. So I think that's what happens with TDD, right? TDD, people apply the pieces that work for them and then neglect the rest of the stuff, right? I mean, you've probably even seen it with me, right? I kind of write the test. I start with, here's what I kind of want to assert, and then I try and fill in the gaps. Now, these tests so far have been after the fact, so it's not TDD. It is the intention to go forward to build it a little bit more that way. So, but be realistic. Most of these certified experts are not going to see your code, right? Your teammates, the people who work with you, right? They are going to see your code, right? I did book club on books that helped immensely, especially with the DDD books. Yeah, if you've got someone to debate it with and discuss it with, I can definitely see that helps. But again, I'm just not a big. I do not recall concepts very quickly. I write code, and it's where I'm comfortable. And then if I pick up a pattern or I pick up something that I enjoy using, you've seen me evolve and change my ways over years of streams. Even if you've only paid a partial attention to the actual code, right? You've seen the you would see the differences if you look back 4 years to how I was writing. Yeah, when you have I've never had a group of people to discuss software with. This is the biggest group of people I've ever had to discuss software with, right? Over the years of people coming in and looking at code and evaluating. And it's why I always encourage, the feedback. But I think that because of me being a more experienced developer, it intimidates people into not saying something all the time. There's very few of you that will actually criticize or comment on what I do. I learned the book's better because we talked about it. Every concept. Normally, if I read a book, if I get one takeaway from it, that's a huge win. Yeah, yeah. It's hard. You got to apply it, and I would when I was first starting out, I had this guy, Tony was called, and he had the Gang of Four book, right? This is 99. And he was working on some software and he's like vigorously typing away and just creating all this cool stuff. And then just, he was building screens in Delphi and it was amazing to watch. And I was fascinated because I was working in the basic side of the application. I wasn't working in this cool feature software. And he's just throwing this code out there. He's like, I'm looking at this book. So he lent me the book and I went home and spilled wine on it. I was gutted. I'm like, well, I guess I'm buying the book now. So I bought him a brand new copy. I've still got the copy with the wine all over it. I just spilt it on the edge of the pages, so it's all red on the sides. And he was reading the book and applying these patterns directly to the code. And oh dear, and I'm like, that's cool, but it was a very literal implementation. So um, now when I look back on it, I'm like, he was literally just writing the patterns into the code, which didn't make for the most readable code. It made for very clean code because he was effectively applying these patterns, but it made for very readable code. So, would I do things differently? Yeah, I would absolutely do things differently. If a pattern appears, a pattern's there and it fits, and I don't worry about it. Well, I don't think you should use patterns. I think you should see patterns and adapt if you see the pattern fits. I started drinking. I wrecked so many computers, then I stopped drinking. Haven't had to replace a computer since. Yeah, patterns are very difficult to use. In my book list, I didn't include a patterns book. Yeah, patterns should be referenced and used if you're trying to refine something you already see. I think feels like you both are helping me understand why I don't feel like I'm getting out of the beginner mindset after 20 years of tinkering at code on and off. That's awesome. It's helping in some way, shape, or form, right? So, you know, trying to end that little that diversionary rant is it's just you've got to write your code, write clean code, write understandable code. Don't try and fit someone else's expectation of what your code should be. Have you ever looked at the Go language? Good day, Essa. How are you doing? I'm really curious about your thoughts on functional programming. So I haven't looked at Go specifically. I haven't really tinkered with much functional stuff. A couple of years ago, I kind of did some stuff with Grumpy on F sharp. I think functional programming makes more sense in a lot of ways, and most of the C sharp we write today isn't very object oriented. Right? It is mainly functional in its design. So it is something I probably would want to study more. Well, functional procedural, well, there's always a new one, especially in some languages that rhyme with JavaScript. Yeah, frameworks, concepts. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to jump back and forth there, but so, yeah, I mean, it's funny because yesterday we were looking at what's it called? The question from yesterday on language that was basically Python's I have very bad recall these days. Python's origins, right? Um, Getting started. Yeah, syntaxes are kind of similar in terms. Um, but again, even with modern day C sharp, right? You start a new project, right? And um, you're presented with, he says, new window. Yeah, it did open. It just opened on the screen, right? You're presented with. Come on. Get off my screen. Get off my screen. You're presented with console write line, right? You're not presented with public class. You're not. All that's gone away, right? So we kind of have moved towards that style of programming where the least amount of stuff in your way, the better. So functional languages kind of fit that, right? They're not structure. They're not types. They are data and manipulating data. And most of the C sharp stuff we write, I mean, obviously, I'm to do what I'm doing here, I'm leaning on classes, but that's because the framework is built that way, right? The tools are built that way. If I was using a minimal API, it would be these are the functions you can invoke when you call things. So the styles have very much changed over the years, and um, but yeah, functional is, I mean, by its definition, it's functional, right? Um, I think the right tool for the right job as well is definitely a case, but the style of development has changed a lot since when I first started programming, and object orientation was the thing. Everything had to be an object. You had to consider the data as objects, and we do use the objects, but they're not used in the same way. There's no inheritance. There's very little inheritance. You mainly pattern matching these days, right? So you might fit things into an interface and pattern match, is it this, right? So you're not really using, car, luxury car is inherited from car is inherited from vehicle, etc. There's core stuff you can learn that will always be useful, maybe procedural. I've been writing C. I need to find some courses on it. Yeah, C and C++, not easy concepts once you go beyond the language and you start to figure out how to actually write libraries. The whole linking and compiling stuff is nightmarish at times. You can get yourself in a big mess there. I took that change to make it more like Python, to make it more approachable. Yeah, it is. The change to use the inline statements, the namespace, the inline namespace, the file space namespacing, etc. All that is to flatten the code, get rid of the nesting, because again, this looked intimidating, right? That looks far less approachable, far more approachable than this, right? Because most developers or most people come into programming for the first time are like, what does this mean, right? And then they're told, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I would bet you could ask a lot of programmers these days and they still wouldn't know what that means, right? And for reference, that's your entry point. That is marked as an address at which point the program will start, right? So it's given the main argument. You can actually set a different method, but you can set it. But it's the entry point the program is given to start at and move forward from. A function to begin with, right? So all this does is just builds that out underneath to make it more approachable. Trying some C, I can see how C++ is so much easier. C has almost no language features. I was told to memorize it for my first programming class. The only difficult concept in it is static. Yeah, static is, but then you need to get into instancing and things like that. So, from a beginning perspective, that's way more approachable. That functional style of because that's what that encouraged, right? Because public void do a thing, right? I'm going to write a function from here. Actually, void do a thing, right? It's the way that encourages it to work, and people will write that, right? And then you become more advanced and learn about the structures and stuff. But that's how you're going to write the code. So you're going to write that functionally. You're not going to write that object oriented. Yeah, I mean, along the way, I might find tools that work really well for this, right? I might find tools that are better at doing certain things. So I shouldn't be afraid to use them. And this style of programming, this style of laying the application out into these or mini monoliths, these are not microservices right now, right? They're not going to be microservices because they are doing a little bit too much. They are. I'm trying to avoid domain-driven design stuff, right? These are groups of behavior that do a thing. Microservices would be a little bit more granular, but doing it this way means that because I'm using Kafka to distribute events, if I find, let's say, Go or Python or something is really good at doing something like crunching numbers or calculating statistics or whatever, I can plug those into this overall architecture without any changes, right? And I can do an A/B test on things, right? I can write a function, I can write a set of code in F sharp or in Python or in Go, and plug it in and verify. Okay, that performs better than that. This does this, and these are the hard parts because in this application I can test that. In reality, you've got to go with what your team's skill set is, right? Don't start introducing language into a product because it's cool or because it might be faster. What's faster is the team being able to maintain stuff. So if you introduce Go because it's quick at doing something, right? And because you understand how to get the performance out of it, that's great. But if none of your other teammates know how to do that and don't understand how it's working, it will cause you larger problems down the road, or not even maybe cause you the problem. It causes your company the problem. So better the poison you know than the poison you don't. Yeah, if I can get a C# program to run in um, within 300 milliseconds of a Python script, right? I'm going to use C#. I don't care about 300 milliseconds. If it's 5 seconds even, I'm going to choose C#, right? Um, it would be nice to see some DDD. I appreciate that. But again, my focus is on the application first because the more I've looked at DDD, the more I believe I have to understand the domain in a way that I don't understand it right now. Right? I don't want to try and apply domain driven design because I will get stuck on the concepts. So, what I will do is if things start to appear, I will try and make note of them and I will still try and look back on them. And maybe it's a point where, someone like Dota who has studied more DDD um, is able to say, hey, that's an aggregate or that's this. And because they can see it and they've studied that a little bit more. Right. And we can spend some time discussing it for certain. Again, that's why I'm streaming this stuff. It's not to necessarily just achieve. I'm going to achieve this off stream as well as on stream, right? But yeah, we can definitely discuss DDD. I always confuse DDD with hexagonal, which is concept versus implementation, really. Yeah, and even DDD is again one of those things that it's easy to read, it's hard to apply because DDD is a concept. The examples I believe are in C++, right? But DDD is in the original book. Von Vernon made a C sharp version, but identifying those things and pulling them out is one thing, but how to write the code that interacts and uses them effectively, that's the hard part, right? Um, so yeah, we will definitely touch on that over the coming months. But it's uh it's not a priority right now purely because I do not want to distract myself with trying to apply techniques that I'm not an expert in. Right, DDD is not my strongest area because I've never had a domain to apply to. Right, everything I've worked in has either been established and does not fit well with domains, or it has not really taken off in that manner because other people haven't understood it either. So again, having that discussion, having the ability to talk with other people about software development definitely changes your ability to comprehend it. If it could be an entirely different software system by a different provider, it's a bounded contest. Yeah. And again, right, it's you start to try and apply DDD when you don't fully grasp it. And what's going to happen is my software is going to change shape. And it's not going to be what I want it to be. It's going to try and fit. And I'm going to end up terming things like this bounded context or this aggregate, etc. And most of the technology applications of DDD that fit inside are focused on the aggregate rather than the actual behavior. So anyway, let's test this. The hard part of DDD are the bigger scopes too. Yeah, so I still have my books, and I still intend to read through my books and apply things and try and learn, but it's just not my focus right now. Okay, so we are going to try. We've got to set something a little bit more secure. Not secure, but a little bit, because I think Auth0 will reject this password outright if I just use that. So I'm gonna have to figure out some validation. P0T4. Okay. So we're going to try and hit send. If we get green, we've got some positive. Okay. Odds on that user being over here. Do we believe that I have an inkling of what I'm doing? Hey. Right? No. No. There you go. That's one. I had a moment of, oh no, the wrong one. It doesn't put puts me in alphabetical, I think. So we reused a component, right? We had tenant management now invokes the registered tenant user. Registered tenant user is a command. This command will create the user if it does not exist in our system. So the biggest problem I have with that is the naming is registered tenant user. It creates a user or adds them to the tenant if they exist already. It's not very explicit. There's kind of there's a side effect there, but it does make sure that that is done, and effectively, if you've got the user already. I miss dotnet sometimes. Hi, good morning. Good morning, PNJ. How you doing? Ah, Jay, how are you doing? I did not recognize the name. I clicked on the logo. How's things? Oh, Rambling Geek. Oh, bacon butty time. Bacon butty for lunch as well. That's good. Nice. Okay, so yeah, the registered tenant user will create the user if it does not exist, and then add it to the tenant, and then publish the event. That event, I'll get back to that in a second. The event is subscribed to by tenant user was registered, which will turn around and register that with Auth0. Right, so that's that. What's the elevator pitch on the project? Jira, but less bad. Essentially, yes. So I'm trying to make a product. right? I'm not trying to just do this as a side project that is just for stream. This is for a product, right? I do want to try and build this to completion. So the challenges I have with Jira or any platform that I know of so far is the lack of communication, right? The lack of visibility into where work lies, right? And it's funny because I actually came across this yesterday. I was working on something, and I'm like, and the QA was like, we need to create a ticket for that. I'm like, why create another ticket? Right? Why do we not just update the notes on the one we're working on? Why do we'll need to create a bug? But it's not a bug. So we're going to create another item that's going to sit in the screen as being a bug that needs to be addressed when it's not a bug, right? And we're going to create more confusion because then I'm going to have to be responsible for knowing where that bug is, right? So my goal is to introduce more visibility, more accountability, and clearer notifications as to what is going on with this system as a whole. So if I have a story that's sat there and I've got a review date on it of 7 days from now, if that 7 days hits and people are who care about that story are wondering where it is, they don't have to go and ask my manager to ask me to tell them what the status is. And I say, oh, well, I'm waiting on this person, right? That is all visible from within, right? It will be published to everybody. Hey, this needs reviewing. It's currently sat in this status. And here's where this person is with it, right? In terms of it's in progress, it's waiting to be reviewed, it's in QA, etc. So trying to introduce some sort of alerting and notifications into the process, and also visible dashboards, right? Example resonates with my soul. Yeah, we've all been there, and it's frustrating. And our developer productivity is ruined by the fact that we do not have clear, visible workflows. And then people create spreadsheets. You're creating tools to manage your tools. There's a problem. One of the ways we improved our process was taking note of how long it took to push the entire feature from start to finish. E.g., it takes 3 months to be done with at least 1.5 months of manual testing to make sure it's done, while the dev probably has time to add tests then. Or PR reviews take a week and that slows us down a ton. Right, but it's developers in most organizations have time to develop and do the work they're meant to be doing. And oftentimes you're pulled into extra work. Where's this story? Where are we at with this project? What's this doing? Right? It's extra work that doesn't need to be there, right? And then spreadsheets that get imported into some Gantt viewer. So yeah, tooling on tooling on tooling. It's just yeah, well, not me. You'll get there. Don't worry. You'll witness a new kind of, I won't use the word, but pain. We'll call it pain. Yeah. At a higher level, the managers, product owners, project managers need to figure out priorities. Right. And that's what I'm trying to introduce, right? What I'm trying to do is give my take on here's how I think that should be done, right? And it's again why the DDD thing doesn't necessarily work for me right now, is because I don't understand that domain well enough to explore, to describe it. I will by the end of this project, right? Because at some point I will ask people to try and use this, right? Maybe on side projects, maybe I'll provide ability to test it and to tinker with it and see how it works. A high level, the manager's product, yeah, and how much work can fit in the pipeline. But you don't. But if you don't know how much work is in churn, which is oftentimes the damaging factor, right? You don't know what work is actually still outstanding, where this project lies, where this item's not done, etc. Because it's just sat there waiting on something. I'm listening to a dog dream, I think. It creates voids that they can't account for, and then all of a sudden something pops up, right? So what I'm trying to do is say, hey, if this work is with this team now but has dependencies on other teams, that is visible to everyone, right? It has review dates, and review dates are not optional. They are, this has to be reviewed by this point. Where are we with this story? And everybody knows what happens to it next, right? Yeah, the worst situation is it looks like work isn't getting done. A ticket sitting in dev for 4 weeks without movement. Right. And why? And that's kind of why one of the first things I'm doing is putting a a necessary review date on there, right? This has to be, it doesn't have to be completed. It has to be reviewed by a certain date, right? So if you've got a sprint, that review date might be the end of the sprint, right? So at the end of the sprint, everyone would get a notification. This is now overdue, right? So if marketing cared about this story, they could be notified. This story is now overdue. It's currently sat in progress or whatever, right? So people can subscribe to notifications and stories. People can see work that's cross team, right? These are challenges that are oftentimes handled by either spreadsheets or managers calling managers, and your daily stand up becomes not here's the story I'm working on, here's the challenges I'm having. It's becoming where are we with this project? That was sat with QA last week. I don't know. I'd have to catch up with them. Okay, could you catch up with them and get that as a priority? Okay, yeah. Context switch. I'll go do that now, and then I'll try and get back on the other thing that I need to do. Yeah. Typical situation: 4 weeks in dev, 4 weeks in review, 4 more weeks in dev. Can be. If you don't split up your larger feature, that's what happens, especially if there's handoffs. Well thought out features, right? Planned features. Again, right now we're working on the ticketing component, but going forward, it will evolve. Essa, thank you very much for the sub. I really do appreciate that. That's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much. Truly appreciate that. I'm glad you're getting something out of this. This is rewarding. Okay, so let's move on. So right now we have a new user registered. Right, I've got to make sure I don't lose that password because I'm gonna have to log in with that. I've got my coding challenges thing up there. I did go through that site. I do want to go back and I will pick something out. By the way, actually look kind of fun. I just got to pick the right time. I gotta get ready for work. We had bugs yesterday, sideline feature work. That sounds familiar. Yeah, which is extremely unusual. But it happens, right? And other things get affected. Yeah. That happens. Just and that's exactly the sort of thing that I'm trying to aid out, smooth out, aid with. But have a great day, Delta. I complained to my dev friends. They said it isn't that every day. Sadly, a lot more developers work with bugs than they do with features. And it's one of the things that I would always say is if you've got an out of control bug backlog, you need to look at steps to stabilize the software. And I think I said this to Rambling Geek the other day. Actually, first look at how you stabilize your software. Improve the components. Your bug backlog isn't going to get smaller if you just keep fixing bugs on an ad hoc basis, right? Figure out how to stabilize that bug backlog and get it under control so that you're not chasing bugs, so you can focus on feature improvement, right? It's a chicken and egg, but you should try and do it. And sadly, you're in a lucky position if you are only being sidelined by bugs once in a while. I almost think too fast a release schedule can cause that. Yes, if software is being rushed out and you've got developers that are accommodating it, it will almost certainly happen. In my last gig, we had a feature freeze if we had more than 2 bugs a sprint, 2 sprints in a row, all work stopped until we fixed the problem. That is a very responsible attitude to it. It is to be able to say, hey, things go on hold, we fix the problems, we don't let them get out of hand, let's move forward. And yeah, if it's okay to push buggy software and fix it afterwards, then all of a sudden all you're doing is fixing afterwards. Yeah, you'll just chase it. And too many companies work that way. Too many companies work with the customer. But hold on, isn't the customer going to suffer in the long term if we release subpar code? So you gotta keep an eye on that. It's a great way to communicate to product. Hey, stop rushing us. This is why. Right. And buggy software often comes from missed requirements, misunderstood requirements, right? It's again why I kind of promote the whole, I'm weekly doing it now, but going through weekly as in poorly, not weekly as in once a week. Going through this and saying, hey, look at this story. What could I ask? As usual, should be able to attach notes to a ticket. Well, PMs give no definition. What does that mean? How do we do that? What do you expect it to look like? All these questions that developers should be promoted to or prompted to answer or to ask and get answers for before you're beginning. Seems like a band-aid to me. Wouldn't you prefer a reasonable product? Also kind of blamish. A band-aid. Not quite sure. Or are those just general questions? Because, better story requirements, less confusion, less assumption, stronger development practices. It all goes into one, right? It all, I guess our method is to push the dev all the time, and product owners orders what they want, and EM puts it into the pipeline as he can. Different processes, and if it works for a group, then fine. But if you are getting a higher and higher bug, well, yeah, ideally you're not pushing buggy software. Every business wants no buggy software, right? A business that is trying to get a product out the door doesn't want you to be pushing bugs. They want you to be pushing good software, but they leave it in your hands. And oftentimes, as a developer, you will think that it's your responsibility to make sure that code's perfect. And they'll let you believe that if someone else doesn't have to do more work to make sure your requirements are clearer, right? Say it's 4 releases a year. If there's a bug in prod in a feature, we just turn off the flag, fix it, then release it. And again, that's come from some good architectural principles at the beginning where you introduce feature flags. So you can turn off a feature, right? I was told the other day, don't make it pretty, make it work. Sometimes it's not about pretty. Yeah, that's an unreasonable management team. That's someone who's focused on delivering. Yeah, if they don't understand what you're doing, you need a champion, right? That's what you need, a champion, or you need to be the champion, right? You need to prove, here's why this is better, right? Here's why that, yeah. You need to say, like with the unit testing thing, I know you're picking it up and you're trying to learn and stuff, right? But before you present it, you need to kind of show some measured progress, and that's going to be the hard part for you, right? Yeah. But always remember, you're the expert, right? It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 5 minutes, 5 months, etc., or whatever I normally say, right? You're the expert. If you're being put in a position of, here you can do this job, then you're the expert. You're the person in control of that, and you should be trained to make sure that you are confident when you need to be. Redesigns are hard to justify as opposed to continual refactoring. I think that's, yeah, redesigns, no one's going to go for redesign. So I give you an actual example, and then I'm going to do some more coding. And again, if anybody has any opinions on this, if you want to discuss this, if you feel this resonates, feel free to join in the conversation. There's nothing that says you can't. So in my last place, I went in and I was hired. I was hired because they needed to make a change, right? They needed to make a change to how they wrote software and how and shore up the software and make it good, right? So I went in and I was presented with a code base that had spent many years just being bug fixed and bug fixed and bug fixed. The average week consisted of at least 20 hours of bug fixing. there was never enough time to fix it because people needed more, right? They needed, we need this feature, we need this feature, we need this feature, we need this feature, right? And now this was not an external product, so I got lucky in that respect, right? Because it would be a lot harder to justify what I did next in that event. Yeah, over 50% of time bug fixing for a team of, at that point, 7 people, right? That's a lot of hours to bug fixes, right? So what I did is I looked at the software. I spent 2 months just going through the code, printing out the code, actually noting down pieces of the code and identifying things and trying to come up with a better way, right? And what I did was, so they had monoliths, right? They had 10,000 lines C# files, right? With a class that did everything, which is coming back to the functional point. That wasn't object oriented. That was functional. So how do I pull this apart and not break the application? So what I did is I came up with, okay, well, here's some of the weak points, right? Here's what we call a service that does a thing. So what does one method of that do, right? Oh, here's a method that does a thing, right? So how much dependency does that have on other things in the class? None. It is actually atomic. Okay, let's create a service that is the do this thing service, right? Create that as a class, right? I don't need to unit test it right now. Create that as a class and swap out the call inside of the service to calling that specific piece. Now I can start to write unit tests around this piece and I can start to make it a little bit more atomic, right? Here's a repeatable pattern for the rest of the developers, right? Here's how to assess, here's how to move. Now we write some tests, we validate the pieces, we do dependency injection, and we break it down. So eventually, over the course of like 4 or 5 months, the software started to stabilize because we were testing the pieces we were replacing. If we found a bug, we could write a unit test around that piece, and now we could fix that bug in half the time. So by the time we got a year in, the software was performing about 50% better, and our bug fixes were down to less than 10 hours a week overall across all the developers, right? So we dropped the support requirement, the bug fixing requirements, and we'd improve the software to a point where it was a lot more stable and performant. Me and one of the other team members that I brought with me spent an entire weekend testing and swapping out dependency injection, right? Because the dependency injection framework that we're using was adding 3 seconds to every request. So we swapped that out and the application became lightning fast and yay, big win, right? But it took a lot of time. It took that energy. And again, at some points, yeah, it was ridiculous. It was XML based. It was all, I can't remember which one it was. Spring? Maybe Spring. Spring dependency injection framework in .NET, not Spring framework in Java. It was ridiculously poor. It was slow. It was creating, I mean, it could have been how it was set up as well. But we spent the time, we got it stabilized, and then my boss was like, what's the next steps? And I said, now we rewrite it. I said, what? Okay, Delta. Thank you very much. As always, appreciate you. Have a great day. So I said, now we rewrite it, but we've just stabilized it. It's working better than it's ever done. I'm like, yeah, but it's antiquated. It's working on all the technologies. It's still not where it needs to be. We can't make big changes. We need to do better. If we want to use newer frameworks, we need to swap this out. We've got to do this. It's unstable overall. We need to do better. Okay, how much time do you need? I don't know, 9 months. Okay, we'll do that. But you also lose the team. The team's now gone, right? So there's just the 2 of you. So we took what took years for a 5 or 6 person developer team to build and rewrote it in 9 months from scratch. No reuse code, just porting the entire logic, using the unit tests that we'd used to backfill, porting the logic to the new unit tests, building out the pieces, And okay, there were some corners cut. There were some pieces that didn't work the way we wanted them to, but we were able to tighten the application. So that by the time we finally released the now kind of like the second full version of the application, it was performing yet again 50% faster than it had been performing for the last 9 months. It was stabilized. We then spent the next 6 years with less than 1 hour of support a week. So it was a gradual piece, but it was worth the effort, and it was worth pulling apart and doing. And people didn't really understand what it was we were doing, but we did it. And it's hard to do. It's not a simple thing. But yeah. So I have been there. I have done it. I'm not speaking from pure theoretical. It's just hard, and it's hard to justify to people who don't understand what software development is, for certain. If it's .NET and it pays well, I'm in. It's not easy to do. So that comment comes from the fact that I've become a PHP developer in the last year. I'm back on my Python BS again and Golang. Nice. The most .NET framework. Nothing wrong with that. That can be updated. That's not beyond the realms of change. And you can replace components if you do it smartly with newer language version, and just they'll work. You just got to do it bit by bit by bit, right? Let's use some corny analogy. How do you eat an apple one bite at a time, right? Link to SQL, yeah. You've got some older technology stuff in there, but it's not beyond. How's the Python and the Golang treating you, Jay? Okay, so what do I actually need to achieve? So I have a user, they're in the database, right? Now, well, he says they're in the database. He hasn't actually confirmed that part yet, but I dislike this. Rider and the JetBrains tools, I love the tooling, but they do not adapt well to go into different resolution screens. So if we go to tenant management, right, we have the tables. Here's our users. There's Bob. There's our tenant users. So there's Bob. That's our tenant. Our T6 new tenant is still our tenant. There's our Saga correctly created. So that should be Bob, right? BB. No, that's tenants C. So, we have a bug. So this is kind of an example of a after the fact bug that no one would actually consider during the process, right? I have Essa. My goodness, thank you very much. I truly appreciate that. That is wow. Thank you. I really do appreciate the sub, and to put that to a tier 3 as well. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Let me get rid of those drafts. So until we have a system, I will do my very best. I promise. Until we have a system that we can actually put these tickets in, right? This is my ticketing system. This is the way I'm going to track the work right now. So this is JetBrains space. So I'm just going to stay in my JetBrains world. So basically, this is a situation where nobody foresees this problem, right? Because it just wouldn't be something you think about, um, or maybe you would, right? And this is a good thing to raise. I have a new tenant. I create the tenant. I register my my user. I don't have any indication to my application that the user is verified, right? So now I come in and add a new user, right? Should I be able to add a new user if I have not verified my account? Is it something I should worry about? Is that something that will be protected by my UI? Is it something that I should permit, right? Do I need to know that this user has um, not actually verified the account? So why are they registering new users? So what is this I'm going to write? Well, that's kind of what we'd go through, right? We'd go through this discussion of what do you want to happen when a user hasn't completed the registration? Should they be able to log in? Right? No. So as a user, as a product owner, I should not. I need to change that as a product owner. My wording is wrong there. As a newly registered user, I should not be allowed to log in without being confirmed. So let's just create that as a tracking bug right now, because there's knock-on effects, right? There's effects that I'm not accounting for. I haven't verified the tenant, right? So my saga is still sat out here waiting to be completed, right? Because my verified is false. If I go to verify user, get my user identifier here, and go and verify my ID. Let's just verify that. Verify. Let's just confirm. Yeah, auth 0. Okay, so let's do that. Couldn't connect. Have to be running. So let's confirm that. Bad request. I wouldn't. No. No. That's not going to support that. Can you change the case? There's going to be a keyboard shortcut somewhere to do it. Where do I normally do this? Oh, I know where I normally do it. Probably in there. Ah! Control Shift U. There you go. Bad request. Why do you not have that? Oh, because that's not my user. That is a bad request. That's the user I want. I want to verify that user. What am I verifying there? Would I select the tenant ID? Yeah, I selected the tenant ID. Okay. I think I know how to use software by now. There we go. Verified. So now our tenant is confirmed. Our saga should be. The saga should be removed. Is verified. I should have deleted the saga. Not going to panic about that right a second, but yes, that should be removed. So our tenant is confirmed, etc. But yeah. Wonder why that didn't delete. Interesting. Slightly frustrating that that didn't delete because the behavior should be pretty consistent. Okay, so we have a user, right? We now need to assign a ticket to a user, right? And there's a reason that I'm going down a path here that I know is going to be more complicated than just assigning a user, right? Because there's several concepts I don't have in here that I'm now going to have to use as highlighting, right? And I'm not doing all this purposely for the benefit of the stream. I'm doing this because I'm trying to show, hey, I'm going to develop software, right? That's what the stream is about. I'm going to try and get better at this piece at the same time, right? For my own education, right? And everybody else's, right? I'm going to show the weaknesses in my abilities deliberately because I know that I'm missing things here that I should have caught and I should have identified as stories. Just now, as I'm thinking about the actual piece, I'm thinking about it. So what do? I have to go and discuss what it is involved because it might be a quick assumption, right? I need to assign a ticket to a user, right? What don't I have? Well, I've distributed my system. So what does it mean for... I have Couchbase set up over here somewhere, right? What does it mean to assign a user to a ticket to a user, right? Well, I need to track the user. I don't have that facility, right? So do I need to know who it's assigned to? Like if I get a list of work items, do I need to see who it was assigned to? Well, that's kind of the next story up, right? The next story up is I should be able to register a user in my current tenant. That's kind of done. We'll move on from that in a second. I want to be able to assign a ticket to another user. I should list tickets as well, would be there. But in the design of the system, I could achieve this now by just passing the user ID that's assigned to, right? And having a default of no assigned user, which is okay. And then having a user ID assigned. And that's kind of the path I'm going to go down, but it's not the long-term path. It will need changes. So let's complete T13, register new user. We can go in here, we can post to the user endpoint, it registers a new user, it creates a user in Auth0. So only user with permission to add user should be able to add user. I have verified that through my struggles with... Oh, by the way, I did spend an hour yesterday looking at that all stuff and trying all sorts of different things and questioning why it didn't work and refactoring it and stuff. For me to come on stream 5 minutes later, identify it's the order, switch them around and fix it. So fully transparent, that took me an hour of tinkering around to not realize that solution and 5 minutes of streaming it to realize that was the solution. So I'm not just that good that I remembered, oh yeah, it's just the order. As a product owner, I need to add an additional employee so that I might assign them tickets. I should be able to set an email and default password for the user. Only user with permission to add users should be able to add a user. User should be registered in Auth0. User should be assigned to the tenant, the administration user. I have a user ID 2. I have a user assigned to tenant 1. There's tenant 1. Addresses don't matter. None of this matters to that person. And there we go. We have the user assigned. And I know why that's not working. I think I removed the delete in the copy paste. So anyway, that is T13 done. So let's go over here. Let's change some of this behavior. I want to add this, and this. Moved some policy pieces to shared. The policies, the identity stuff, I'm going to need those time and time again, right? It should be a tenant user, should be should be able to create users, should be able to do this, right? These permissions are going to be global to the entire system, so I figured I'd move that out to that point. Provide extension methods to add roles quickly. Created policies to share common names. And because of recent .NET changes, because I believe what I did here is not supported in older versions. I don't think this was always allowed. It's a constant variable on the policies class. I don't think this always worked. So recent changes, I believe, have made that more possible. So that means that's readable, right? But I'm also, if I change the name, I change it underneath, the code changes. I don't have, where are these magic strings hanging around my system saying can create users, or what if I got a typo in one of them, right? That aids in that, keeping the code clean, keeping the code maintainable, because it's all over the place. Common names. Okay, so commit that. And now, second thing, teams and tenant management, correct order for authentication, authorization in a use area. And now our validator sets the rules. There's some basic rules in here which is kind of cheating. I can also apply regex in this, but at no point have I dictated in a story. Sarav, good morning. Sorry, I did not see the message. YouTube is not as easy to read on my screen. Yeah, no regex. I can apply more rules in here, and even then, I haven't documented in the stories that this is what's required, right? So saying it has to be a minimum 8 and a maximum 50, not really great. And also, I don't even know if that would align with Auth0 at this point, but I'm just going to leave that in there for now, because as I'm testing those requirements, and the reason I'm not panicking about them is because I haven't got any UI, right? I am building this as an API up until the point where I cannot avoid a UI, right? Or should not avoid a UI. So I will have to address those requirements later, because we'll have to have the conversation of, okay, where does validation live, right? Do we validate on the client? Do we validate on the server? There's all manner of questions. So yeah. And it looks like more people have joined. I've lost a follower, but anyway, someone didn't like it. If you have any questions, if you want to discuss what I'm doing, if you don't agree with what I'm doing, right? If you think it's a bad practice, feel free to join in, right? For suggesting regex. Oh, regex, I'm out. This guy has no idea. You know, if you get stuck in an ad and you are listening to what I'm saying, please let me know. I will sorry, I will update. I will hold off on anything that I'm saying well in an ad. So anyway, yeah, I'll have to review this as part of UI, so I'm not panicking about that change. Having the validator there matters. Fanny, good day. How's it going? I need to get shout outs working. Actually, it's built into Twitch now, isn't it? So Canny is doing some really cool Twitch stream game stuff. So I would recommend checking them out. Like missile command for streams. It's very cool. So yeah, let's move that on. Provide endpoint for creating new user. Put some simple validation around required pieces. Actually, I need to validate one thing. Yeah, Bob track name. I have gone with name in all cases. I've not worried about first name, last name, etc. I'm going with name for right now. It's easy to adapt this if later on I believe that it is the right thing to do, first name, last name, but I think that name fits better in the world today. Title doesn't matter. None of that matters to you using this software, right? Verified will come back around and afterwards. Actually, I need to make sure I track that. Let's go here. I'm building quite the backlog. Wanted to see what kind of cool stuff happens here while I try to distract from work. I mean, cool stuff might be subjective considering what you're doing. As far as streaming goes, but yeah. User verification. It does benefit us to know that a user is verified, right? Apex, good morning. How are you doing? No, this is JetBrains space. This is what I'm going to use until my software gets to the point where it is usable enough to be this. Once a user verifies, I'll know what that means. So these are kind of just tracking that I don't forget these things, right? Yeah, my entire approach to this software will be until I need to, I will not have a UI, which prevents me from developing the software based upon the way it looks and more on the features it provides. So oftentimes it's not the way you would develop software because people are expecting to see something. And visuals often provide verification. So product management, etc., can see something, then they know something's working, or they assume something's working. Doesn't mean they know something's working, right? Quiet. Anybody else think that I'm quiet? Does it just mean the stream a little bit quiet? Probably me. It's pretty balanced right now. I think it looks it. I'm a little quiet. %61. Let's see if so I can up it on the. I can up it one tick on the go and see if that was any better. That should be a little louder. Anything else, I'm going to need to do some boosting on the. Yeah. That's been a trick with the game dev stuff. Viewers want to see those visuals. Yeah, visuals are. People like entertainment. If you look at the streams that are out there, right? The streams that even the dev streams that have the most viewers have a form of entertainment. They have some games, they have interactivity, they have things you can mess with. I'm not going to do that. So if I mean, I'm really happy with the viewership that I have right now. I love the chat. I love knowing that there's people that actually, are there. But if I had 100 people that I wasn't entertaining, yeah, that'd be a struggle. And most of the streams do have some level of entertainment. Put some validation around required pieces, but people like seeing things, right? And that's it helps when product management is looking at software because they want to do they want to verify things are working, and that's the best way. Okay, so we're going to commit and push this branch, and then we're going to do what we've done the last couple of days. I'm going to merge that branch straight in. I'm following the pattern bit by bit. I'm trying to be disciplined here because I want to make sure that I'm not messing around with the same branch, or I'm being rigid on the whole. Here's a branch. Here's the piece of work. Here's the branch. Here's the piece of work. Later on, that will make more sense. Yeah, my highest numbers was messing with vector. Yeah, I mean, with game streams, with game dev streams, that creativity is there, that energy is there. There's a lot to look at, and having little things to interact with. You know, I've been in some really amazing streams. It's kind of the necessity, but it's like building a bot. When you first start streaming, building a bot is pretty much, or having a bot available, is pretty much the way. You have to have a bot of some form, and I will have a bot very soon. It's offline for maintenance, we'll say. If you watched on Saturday, then you'll you get that. All right, let's get started. What we're working on today. Good morning, Deflux. How you doing? We are about to start down the next piece of work, which is to assign a ticket to a user. So, barcode reader. Oh, I'm using this as an example, that's why. Okay, so let's go over here. Not the bot. Not the barcode reader. Okay, liquid sky. It's funny, the screen looks way cleaner and clearer on screen, on stream, than it does on my. It looks way more washed out for me, and the colors look stronger on. I mean, that monitor's better, but the stream definitely looks better than the actual screen. Okay, so we're going to merge T13. T13 includes 28 files changed. Oh, into dev. I wanted to merge into dev. Gonna make sure I do into dev. Move some policy pieces. I update a lot of packages. Yeah, this monitor has burning. That monitor's in need of replacement. So yeah. Hi NI512. New here in chat. Can you explain what this project is? So this project is a Agile management, product management tool, similar in vein to Jira. The goal is to build an entire platform that does, you know, ticket tracking, story tracking, planning, etc. I'm building it from the ground up. I'm building it based upon my own experiences, and you know, the differences, the things that I feel could improve the process of software development and planning and prep for every developer. When you see this screen right now, this is JetBrains Space. This is what I'm using to track the work I'm starting to build out and assign to. Yeah, this is and right now we're at the phase of assigning users to tickets. So the last couple of days we've built the ability to add a new ticket, to get a list of tickets. Thank you, Canny, for that graphic description. So the last couple of days we've been working on adding the tickets, listing the tickets. You know, yesterday I began adding a new user and getting that functionality in there, and today we've moved on from that, and for the rest of the stream we'll be getting the assign user to a ticket. For reference, for those that are new, I am Fluff. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. That's so cool. Is the project just for fun, for a client, or something else? Well, it's not just for fun in so much as I want it to become a product, which is why I will not be sharing the source code, by the way. The source code is definitely not open source. Components of the system will be open sourced. I have done some stuff toward that already. and you can check out my repo here. Um, so it's not just for fun. It's not for anybody other than me right now. But I believe that I have some things that can definitely improve that process. I've spent over 20 years as a software developer. I've experienced all manner of different ways of developing software. And yeah, I kind of want to make my impact on it if I can. So that's my goal, right? So I'm sharing it on stream for the purpose of anybody else watching how to develop software, how someone else who is a professional that does not necessarily try and follow everybody else's ways directly does these things. I just formatted that. I added the validator for the post. That's fine. Fluent validation. So right now I'm just reviewing the PR to make sure I don't miss anything. Get my unit tester there. X unit updates. I updated a lot of the libraries. So what I'm trying to do as well is as I go, I'm trying to make sure I update the NuGet packages. So if something breaks, I know about it really early on and I don't have to worry about it again, right? If I do it that way, then I'm less likely to be surprised later on. And the longer I leave that sort of stuff, the more likely I am to be scared of making that change, right? So if I go 3 versions past the library update, then I might be scared to do it because I might create instability that I'm not ready to tackle. So especially early on in the development, I'm updating those packages as soon as I see an update pending, right? So yeah, just a little bit more on this project. Along the way, I'm going to experiment with ways of doing things. I'm going to try different technologies. Right now, this is using SQL Server and Couchbase and Kafka Apache Kafka or Confluent Kafka, really. And it will use many different technologies along the way. The streams for the past couple of weeks have been on YouTube and on Twitch, so you can go to my YouTube, which is linked in the panels below on Twitch. You can go to YouTube and catch up with now several weeks of development. And I gotta get better at that stuff, right? The whole like, share, subscribe thing. It's got to become part of my spiel. But anyway, okay, so we're going to merge that. There we go. Okay, so let's check out development. Let's pull down those changes, fetch the changes. Update. And then let's delete that branch. You gotta get violent with it, like smash that like. People have been liking the videos more on YouTube. I do appreciate that. I've been learning a little bit more about YouTube and engagement, etc. And the more you get videos with likes and comments, YouTube will promote the video more, which gets more viewership. It's all one big cycle. So, yeah. But anyway, so let's move on to the extra story, and then let's see how far we can get through this. So, as a product owner, I want to be able to assign a ticket to another user. So we're going to do T9 now. So we go in here, we create a new branch, feature / T9, assign user to ticket. So doing feature / will allow me to, well, JetBrains actually gives you folders, so that actually works as a folder structure. But it also helps with when you're doing CI builds, etc., which we will get to eventually. With especially as the unit tests get a little bit more involved, right? I want to make sure that I'm continually building the test, so I'll be able to say, hey, when you see a feature branch, do a build, right? Or don't do it on this branch, or don't do it on these branches, right? So I can use those as patterns for builds. Are you worried that you will use this software you're building to track new feature of the software, and if you break halfway into working on something, you will forget what you're working on, and you'll be stuck in an infinite loop? Yeah, so when I switch over to using the software, if I find a bug in the software, I'll be stuck on the bug because I can't get out. I think we'll have to overcome that problem when we get there, right? Love me some good Git workflows. When it works, it'll work well, right? That's the goal. But CI/CD stuff we'll get to later on. I might do some of it off stream. Right now, this isn't doing anything. I did do some workflow stuff on the mediator stuff from the other week, right? So I don't know if I ever updated on that one. So yeah, you can go to the GitHub is linked on the panels below. Mediator sagas is what we worked on last week. I did get this building. If you didn't see that before, so now the workflow fires. So when I do a release of that, it actually publishes just once. I had a typo in the script, so it kind of worked, but it didn't work. So from the workflow perspective, if I go into here, just briefly, so this is what will trigger the production, right? So what event will trigger the production? When you create a release, 3 things happen. The release is created, the release is built, and the release is published, right? I had the word type here, which meant that this was just getting ignored and this was just being applied. So on release, it would build 3 times. It would do it 3 times and try and produce the packages 3 times. So the word types there, not type, which is what I originally had, means that it will filter and only do it on the published version. So it creates the build, it creates the release, then it does something else, then it does publish. And once it publishes the release, it builds the stuff and attaches the product, the packages. Sorry, that was workflow stuff. But that is available. That is one component of this system that is definitely available. Okay, so we've got limited time left today. So let's see what we can do. Work items. So right now, we have an API for work items, an API for tenant management, an API for teams. Teams is just a kind of placeholder for right this second. Tenant management knows about users, right? Work items has no idea about users. But that doesn't mean that I can't achieve this job, right? So when I create a ticket, I could pass in the user ID. And that user ID gets tracked on the ticket, and then the next story to come along is C tickets assigned to me. So being that I have a user ID, I should be able to then say, hey, go get the tickets for me without the ticket system ever knowing my name. So for right now, I think that works. Thinking longer term, it won't work, because if I want to list the tickets in the system with names, I would then have to query. We get into the realm of who owns what data when you start to distribute the data, right? Right now, the tenant management system owns my user data. The ticket system does not have any concept of a user at this point. But if I wanted to list tickets, I would have to pull all the tickets and then join tenant management on those tickets to get the users for the IDs that I've pulled down in the ticket system, which creates a kind of really slow process. So what I can use is the eventing. So I can use Kafka to say a user was created. I can publish the fact that user was created, and I can capture the information in the ticket system. GUID user, which gives me the ability to look it up, right? So once I start to get into that realm, well, document databases, I know that Couchbase is a little different, and I can achieve what I'm about to describe. But if I was using Mongo, that might not work very well because I'd have to go and kind of patch the tickets or capture that somehow so that I can look it up when I create the ticket and assign the actual name, right? Because that name can be shared. That's not harmful. It's just it doesn't own that information. That this system would never be able to, the ticket system would never be able to change the name, but it would have access to it. So when it's queried, it can provide it and then navigate into the relevant system. So we'll go down that path over the next couple of days. But for now, all I need to do is track the user ID. So I just need a GUID. And I can use, because I'm using the API, and I don't have to worry about, in the event of this being an actual story with a UI component attached, that would be very much, I want to be able to select the user. So that would involve, okay, now I need to build a screen, I need to query the user list, provide the user list, they'll attach it and do that. I avoid all that stuff, right? Because I'm just building an API. So I'm able to validate the application without the UI attached, and that does give me some flexibility here that doesn't slow me down, right? I can just make a feature change and we're good. So let's start with, I should be able to assign the user. So by writing it this way, right? And again, I'm going to use this as my own growth as well, right? This is not just about me saying, hey, look, I've come up with these contrived examples for the stream so that I can talk about them. All knowledge, like, no, I'm going to be genuine here and say that's a bad story, right? Because it comes with some built-in implications. As a product owner, I want to be able to assign a ticket to another user, right? I've used the word another user, right? Suggesting that it's assigned to someone to begin with, right? So should we review the create ticket, and should it be assigned at that point? Yeah, we should, right? So when I create a ticket, so I want to be able to assign a ticket to a user, right? And this is the sort of stuff, if you're working with a product management team and they're developing these stories to try and present to you, you as a developer have to push back, because even the slightest little word can come with an implication that you might be like, yeah, it's fine, move on, I'm good, I don't need to define that. But if another developer, that is a dog yawning, if you can hear that at all. I hope you were spared that squeal. As a developer, if you're given that and that's your only requirement, that's not good enough. That's not healthy. So what you need to do is make sure that you are pushing back and gathering more requirements, right? So creating a ticket, updating a ticket. So reassign, is that part of this? Is it within scope? I mean, being practical here, it is within scope of what I can do right now. But should it be a separate ticket? Should it be tracked as a separate ticket? Is editing the ticket different? Yeah, right. So this only involves creating, right? So as a product owner, and it's not about being difficult, right? This isn't about being obstructive to the process. This is about breaking up the work into meaningful, quickly achieved chunks, right? I've got like 10 minutes left of the stream, right? I have a limit on my time. How much of this can I achieve? I might be able to achieve all of this in the next 10 minutes. I don't know, right? I don't think I will, but I might be able to, but breaking up that story into a manageable chunk that is easy to define, easy to discuss, and easy to see an outcome of speeds up your product development because you're not stuck on, well, hold on, you said this. Well, so should I have assigned it to someone like who created it in the first place? Or, you know, those conversations get lost and end up as rules in the software somewhere because someone made an assumption. So it's worth discussing and making sure. As a product owner, when I create a ticket, when I create a new ticket, I should be able to assign that ticket to a user. It is not required to be assigned, right? Again, hey, should I always assign a user? Do I have to force it? Is there a rule in place that says I should be able to say yes, no? Those are things that you should discuss and make sure that you capture. And if you capture them in the story effectively, right, then it's going to be easier to come back on and say, well, that's what the story did, right? Because I'm developing this as an API, the visual aspect of this means that there's no real good verification from a product perspective. So really building out this story any further wouldn't be good. In the future, what I'll do is once I'm developing the UIs for these things, you know, because the UIs will be easier, right? Because the UIs will be implementing the API features, right? We'll know what's available to us. So we'll be able to say, hey, can't do that, right? We didn't build that. Oh, well, now we need to do that. So let's change the API so we can build the API story separate and then build the UI. Again, each piece strengthening the next. So if it was a UI requirement, then I'd be saying, okay, well, I should be able to go into the screen, see this, select a drop down, assign it, hit save, right? There we go, done. Right? So, yeah. Okay, so let's start with a unit test, right? Concerning support tickets. When ticket is added, right, is now not sufficient, right? So again, this comes into my style of unit testing. It may not be everyone's style of unit testing. It may not be right by definition, but it is my style. It works for me. It verifies what I want to do, right? So I'm verifying in this one when ticket is added that the ticket has a review date, the ticket has added date, the ticket has a customer name attached to it, and the ticket has a description. Ta-da! It does what it needs to do. Now this is not sufficient, right? So concerning support tickets, when ticket is added, actually, we can modify this one. When ticket is added and is not assigned. So the language I'm using here is the language that I'm using here, right? I'm using the word assigned here, right? So I'm making sure my language aligns with the way we're talking about the story because the language matters. If I have to review this, PM says, it's not doing this. And I say, hold on, let me look. If I can go to a test and say, when the ticket is added and is not assigned because it's actually a behavior, right? Then I can verify the test and I can actually maybe add some code into the test or even a further test to validate a situation in a very small amount of time. And if I prove that it's not possible, then I can go back to them and say, no, look, here, it doesn't actually work that way. If we pass in this, it doesn't work, right? So it can help in that support role. It can help in that diagnosis component, right? So here, by default, because I haven't changed anything, right, this is going to pass, he says with confidence, as it doesn't even offer the option to build. Right. So if I right click on that and hit run unit tests, ta-da, it's magically working, right? So do I just add this now? No. I now add the other test. When ticket, because now I need to disprove it, right? I need to prove that it's not quite doing what it's doing, and we'll come back on that. And is assigned. Because I'm introducing a feature that is only it's a optional feature, that other test will always work, right? Because by default it's not assigned, therefore there's no validation of it. but I can't validate the absence of something. So now I have to validate the presence of something to validate that that other one is not incorrect, right? So I will go back and add a unit test to validate it, but it will only be to cover the gap, right? The gap that could be, what if they assign a user or don't assign it, whatever. They change it, right? And it's always populated. Well, then this code should break, right? So I'm going to start with what I'm actually validating here, the newer validation, because the other stuff still matters, but yeah. User assigned is set, right? So in here, I'm going to assert that the ticket has a user assigned, right? I still want to validate that the other things are true, right? And go through that. And in the interest of time and only time, I'm going to do a bit of copy and paste, right? So the way I'm writing these tests, again, it's not always the way. I kind of like a structure of my arrange and act to be separate methods, and therefore my unit tests are pure assertions, right? There's nothing in the unit test that is assert, arrange, act, assert, right? That's the common pattern, right? Arrange, act, assert in each test. It just doesn't work very well for me in the way I write tests. Sometimes it does, but you know, oftentimes I kind of have fallen on this pattern. And this again is a just a maturing of my opinions on how to write tests, right? It works for me. Some of this is stolen off Mr. Anhorn. He kind of doesn't do this exactly, but he does do something similar in his tests, and I kind of like it. It fits. So let's put in, and again, this is purely in the interest of time. So what am I actually asserting here? I'm asserting that equal, this is going to be assigned user identifier result dot assigned user identifier, right? So I have missing data. I have a bad situation, but it's not a red situation. So if we're doing red, green, refactor, this is not red. This is just not compiling, right? So I need to create some of this data to make sure that I can start to make it build. So I create an assigned user identifier. And now my result, my ticket, is going to need that data. I can't avoid it, right? Public. And it knows that it's optional. Awesome. Right? So now it should build, but it best not pass. Right? So I should have a red. And there's my first red. Okay? User assigned is set. So now let's make it pass. So to do that, I need to pass in, when I handle the message, the actual assigned to user. So let's go to my command. Here's my command: string customer name, string description, date time, review date, GUID tenant identifier. I'm going to add this before the review date because I think that's where I did it in the other one. So GUID assigned to user identifier. Actually, we can just drop the 2. It's just extra words for the sake of it. So assigned user identifier. So let's make sure that goes in there, right? And again, my language is consistent. I'm keeping within the bounds of that. I now have an error in this side of things because now this isn't going to compile because now this has a dependency which I can fill with null, right? The test is documenting the usage of the APIs, the system as it stands. So if I'm looking at how to handle the add new support ticket, I can come into here and say, oh, well, what if the user is not assigned? What do I pass? Oh, I pass this. Okay, that's the behavior, right? And again, I will add the test afterwards. But I want to focus on this one first. So again, I should run this and I should still get a red because it's not set. Oh, different error. Oh, because the actual code now is breaking. Right. So I don't want to go and change that. No, I do. I want to change that one, but I do not want to change the actual code. Signed user identifier. And again, I'm using the word identifier over ID. The reason I'm calling it identifier is because anywhere I have a GUID that I'm sharing. No, sadly, I'm trying to finish up. I need to. I know. Thursdays and Friday streams will be longer though. They will be at least an hour longer because I have the days off. Yeah. So again, this is going to break the code upstream, but the unit test should still build, right? So I should still be able to run the unit test. 22 hours longer. I wish. I don't know if anyone would want to watch a 22-hour stream of this. I think there's a point at which it becomes unproductive. Okay, so now I'm not getting it. So now I need to make my test pass. So let's go into my handler. So I'm going to go into here, and I need to do assigned user identifier equals command assigned user identifier. Ta-da. Now, it should run. We have a green. Let's validate that in this one. Fact. And I need to make sure that, again, my language is consistent. User assigned is set. User assigned is not set. Assert null result dot assigned user identifier. Run the unit tests. They all pass. We're good. Now our endpoint's broken because now we don't pass in the assigned user ID. We now need to pass up the assigned user ID, right? Again, I want to try and stay consistent here. I want to make sure that I am ordering these variables the same, because then at a glance I can see if they're wrong. I want the naming to be the same, assigned user identifier, and now we can do request.assigned user identifier. We should have a build, and now we should be able to run. You should be able to go to tickets, and let's do get tickets. Let's see if I actually have tenant management, register bearer. It should be like 24 hours or something like that. I think it's a longer. Okay, that's getting tickets. Now I'm going to add a ticket. Right, this is T9. Verifying T9. Unassigned. The dogs have been good today. May that bode well for you. I got them to go out at the right time. I got them fed at the right time. They went to the bathroom before the stream, so they've settled. I can hear them yawning, but they haven't really done much complaining right now. And they're not moving around right now. Actually, one's laying on the couch with his head over, looking. So it's almost time. I think they know what the 2 hours is. So now, if I do verify T9 unassigned, right, this should still. That should have permissions. That should have permissions. Tickets, post, authorized policy tenant user, support user. So this ticket, this token, create ticket. Let's go there. So let's make a fine-grained permissions change. Yeah. Create ticket, delete ticket, read tickets, list tickets. Let's just do that for, no, I don't want that. Post. Did I make the opposite? Did I make the opposite change here? I hope I didn't. I hope I didn't flip that. Authenticate. No, authentication then authorization. Authentication before authorization. This is still going to error. Let's just validate 100% that that is the ticket. Yeah, that is. So I have permissions to do it. So why is it failing? We got it working in tenant management. Oh. Tickets, program, authentication over authorization. Authentication over authorization. Yeah, that's the right order. Not where I expected to fall because we've definitely gone through this last couple of streams. So I was kind of hoping this would just be a literal, yeah, look, it works. Because it makes a great stopping point for this particular focus. Seems I'm not going to be that lucky. Ticket 7031. I didn't think I'd change the permissions in any sort of, so, here, let's do it that way. Let's see if that one was. So tenant user is just, I have a tenant ID, right? That is enough to place it and should work. The rest of the permissions don't really matter. I can always tinker with that later. Couldn't connect to server. Huh. That is not going to work for me. So anyway, that would be the goal. If that's not working properly, I can't post the data because the tenant identifier won't be there. But that will be the goal. That will be the first thing I demonstrate tomorrow morning. Because it will, I'll just have to review those permissions again to make sure that I haven't added anything weird in here in terms of the authorization stuff. Authentication, authorization. Yeah. So I'm going to finish up here. We'll raid over to someone and go from there. If you've enjoyed this, if you want to continue, please follow. I'm gonna go live Monday through Friday, whenever I can. Obviously, with the holidays season coming up, that's gonna be a little tougher for the next couple of weeks, but I will try and hold to that schedule. Like I said, Thursday and Friday this week, I will be streaming for a little longer. And you fouls, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate that. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts or comments, you're always free to share. I do not pretend that I know everything, right? I'm trying to learn as I go as well. So it's not, hey, look at me, I'm a super expert. It's I've got experience doing this, right? I've spent years as a developer. So I want to share that. I want to be able to answer questions. I want to be able to learn from other people as well. So it's never out of the bounds to say, hey, I think you should do it this way, and here's why, right? So if you want to, there's also a Discord server available. I'll paste the link in here now. I don't remember if that's in my below the chat. That is there if you want it. And yeah, I will return tomorrow. I will get this working. We'll do some more of this. We'll get the listing working, and then we can discuss what it means to have distributed data. Why some data should exist in other systems and whatnot. So yeah, so we're going to raid over to Apex. I saw Apex went live. Apex is developing a game, and he's building the framework the same way I'm building this, right? He's building components. He's not worrying about the way it looks right now. He's focused on the functionality, inventory, all sorts of cool stuff. So, and he's using Godot. So please drop a follow. And yeah, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it as always. And I will return tomorrow. And take care. Bye all.